Hey, in this first video tutorial, we will start by explaining what is Ruby. So, the Ruby programming language was created in 1995 by Yukihiro Matsumoto. The aim of creating this language was to create a scripting language, scripting as something which is easier to use and more human readable and easier to interact with than other non-scripting programming languages such as C++ or Java. To illustrate this using an example, we have here some code which is written using the shell scripting language, and the code is actually quite readable and easy to understand. The first block of code is testing if the first command line argument is greater than the second command line argument. If so, then it will print that the first command line argument is larger than the second one. The second block of code will check if in the case the third command line argument is in whatever, so if it exactly matches whatever, then it will print that the third command line argument is whatever. If not, and if it is in asterisk, where an asterisk is a wildcard that matches anything, the code will print that this is the default case. Matsumoto did not only want a scripting language, but he wanted it to be object-oriented. To understand what object-oriented is, just describe anything that you encounter. So take your finger for example, it has a length, a width, a depth, a color. These are your finger attributes, and what does your finger allow you to do? It allows you to have mobility, so this is one of the functionalities or functions that a finger has. So OOP is centered about designing entities, which have attributes also known as properties and functionalities or functions, that represent real or abstract world objects. So it is about abstracting things that exist in the real or abstract world into these type of entities, so into entities that have attributes and functions. Ruby is also an imperative, reflective, and functional language. Imperative, as in you must utter exactly what must be done. Reflective, as in having the ability to reflect, as in to ask a piece of code about the attributes and functions that it has defined, and to have the ability to add extra behavior or functionality dynamically. Functional, as in designing functions to perform certain tasks. The OOP side of things was affected by Smalltalk, and the functional side of things was affected by Lisp. This being said, Ruby is a general-purpose programming language, so it can be used for anything, but where is it used, you might ask? Well, some notable usages of the Ruby programming language are Metasploit, which is used for penetration testing. Homebrew, which is a package manager, used to install application for Mac OS. CocoaPods, which is used to add Objective-C and Swift libraries to Xcode project. Rails, which is a web framework. The GitHub website is written using Rails. Vagrant, a tool to create and deploy development environment and virtual machines. So mainly Ruby is used as a scripting language, and there are multiple versions of Ruby that are maintained. So for example, the 2.7 version and the 3.0 versions are still actively maintained, and it seems that the trend is to maintain a Ruby's version for 4 years. The Ruby 3.0 version is backward compatible with the 2.7 version. When thinking about version numbers in Ruby, the first number is called the major one, and is increment on special events and on breaking changes that could not be shipped in a minor release. The second number is called the minor one, and when a minor version is released, it may or may not have API incompatibilities with a previous Ruby version. A minor version is released every Christmas. The third number is called teeny. When a teeny version is released, it maintains API compatibility, and it just contains security and bug fixes. A teeny version is released every 2 to 3 months. API compatibility means that code which has worked on a previous version will work without any change on a newer version. Ruby is an interpreted language. Interpreted means that there is a program which is going to execute your code. In other words, Ruby is not a compiled language. For a compiled language, the code is translated into CPU instructions and is executed by the CPU. Starting Ruby 2.6, just-in-time compilation has been introduced to Ruby, so what this means is that the code which is being called a lot, and when a given threshold is attained, is compiled into machine instructions, so part of the code is kept on being interpreted, and only the most used code is compiled. Compiled languages are in general faster than interpreted languages, whereas the advantage of an interpreted language is that you can do your testing and see results directly, so there is no need to wait for the compilation process to finish. Finally, concerning Ruby's popularity, it has its ups and downs, so currently, as in the time of recording this video, Ruby is ranked 16th by the IEEE as a general-purpose programming language, and is ranked 9th as a web programming language. For GitHub, in 2014, it was ranked 5th, and nowadays, it is ranked 10th. Finally, for the SHIOB Index, Ruby is ranked 13th as a general-purpose programming language.